Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Charles Sebastian, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and when we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have an interesting show in store for you guys. Before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and sub to the channel. Now, as you guys know, the sports media landscape is changing, right? We have media stars popping up every single day. You know, you have former NBA players going into the space. You have guys like the Kelsey brothers getting, I think they just got, was it $100 million deal? They got a pretty lucrative deal. I believe it was with Amazon last time I checked. You have people like Pat McAfee. They got an $85 million deal to be at ESPN. You have people like Shannon Sharp. You have people, you have not the Dan Le Batard. Yeah, the Dan Le Batard show. I think they got a $50 million deal with DraftKings. Everybody's making money everywhere, right? And the space is evolving. You had guys that were on television going into the independent space. The whole thing is just changing rapidly. And things are still changing at ESPN. If you guys remember, ESPN had some pretty high profile layoffs over the last few years. You can think of voices like Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, Max Kellerman, Jalen Rose, recently RG3, and the most recent one is Zach Lowe, right? Zach Lowe. And Zach Lowe is really at the heart of what we're discussing here today. This morning, I was going through the internet and I came across an article from Awful Announcing and had the following headline. Long before laying off Zach Lowe, ESPN had given up on smart NBA analysis. Now, what's interesting about this article is that they're I can't even say the damn word, extrapolating their viewpoints and what was said in this article from an interview that I was actually watching on the Bill Simmons podcast that was actually published 2 days ago as they were reacting to Zach Lowe being fired, where Bill Simmons had Brian Curtis discuss this news of Zach Lowe being laid off from ESPN. But let me read a little bit from what this article had to say. It says, the news of ESPN laying off Zach Lowe hit like a slap in the face to basketball diehards online. Since his days at Celtics Hub and Sports Illustrated, Lowe's merged the colloquialisms of the basketball internet with the fluency in coach and exec speak. In the years after, at Grantland and then the worldwide leader, Lowe brought analytics and modern strategy into the foreground and became perhaps the most celebrated basketball analyst, if not sports analyst, in the industry. After years of layoffs and reorgs at ESPN, Lowe appeared to be smart and versatile enough to stay alive as a salve for some of the network's more vanilla coverage. Lowe's departure will be felt in Bristol and amongst ESPN audiences. He was a regular on NBA Today and Get Up, hosted a popular podcast, and wrote consistently great features for the website. Without his work, ESPN NBA coverage will be different. But his departure is the end of a trend dating back years, not the beginning of a shakeup. On the Bill Simmons podcast Thursday, Ringer's media writer Brian Curtis asked if ESPN doesn't have room for Lowe, who does it have room for, right? So I was actually watching that sit down. That conversation lasted about 31 minutes. I'd probably gone about 10 minutes into it. Then I came across this article and I was very surprised that they were talking about essentially what I was listening to. But before we even get into this discussion, today's video is brought to you by our sponsor, GameTime. With only 4 months left until the end of the year, I look forward to creating special moments with family and friends by attending various theaters, shows, plays, and sporting events. And when it comes time for me to look for tickets, I absolutely love to use GameTime. GameTime is one of the most reliable marketplaces for last-minute tickets to the most popular events in sports, music, and theater in more than 60 cities across the United States and Canada. GameTime saves me money, time, and peace of mind, so I don't have to sort through thousands of tickets looking for the best prices or worry about whether or not if they're authentic or whether if I'm going to receive them on time. GameTime Picks, one of my favorite GameTime tools, analyzes thousands of tickets for all of your favorite events near your location and finds you the best possible deal so you don't have to. For example, I'm looking forward to this upcoming concert at Madison Square Garden of one of my favorite composers, Hans Zimmer. Here, I can select the all-in price to see the total ticket price up front. no hidden fees. And now I can sort through the best possible deals I can find. I can choose the cheapest deals, the great deal, or the amazing deal. Once you select the ticket you want, you can use their panoramic seat view to ensure you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. And if you're like me and always make plans at the last minute, you can grab tickets up to 90 minutes after the event has started. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and use redeem code CLNS for $20 off. And remember, whenever you support this sponsor, you're supporting this channel. Thank you. So what we want to do now is we want to play exactly what these gentlemen discussed on the Bill Simmons podcast as it pertains to this article. And then we're going to come back and really get into this show. Take a listen to what these guys had to say here.
And then the second reaction is something you and I've said over the years as we've seen these layoffs and people walk out the door of Bristol is if ESPN doesn't have room for Zach Lowe, who does ESPN have room for?
And who do they want in the room?
It's kind of the question, isn't it?
It's clearly a strategy, and they clearly value certain things. And I think, everybody gets mad anytime something like this happens. And, and I get it. But to me, it's more interesting what the strategy is and what they're thinking and where Zach fit into that. Because obviously, they had an issue with this 10 years ago when I was there. Like they didn't know how to monetize podcasts. They didn't know how to get real value from them. Zach's biggest value is as a writer and a podcaster and a steward of the game, and also somebody who can go on TV and be good. But it seems like what they value now is people who can do TV hits first and foremost, and hits that you can cut into 70 to 90 second videos that can go on their website or go on YouTube. And the better the headline is for those hits, that seems to be where the value is. And I'm not besmirching some of the people that do that stuff. I'm just saying that seems to be how they value it. It's either that or the giant names, which you've covered many times in Ringer pieces, like getting the best possible people to cover a football game, right? Spending money in the high-end talent. I'm sure they're going to bring back Stephen A. Smith. But I think that's what they're becoming. I think what's so fascinating to me is that it's the opposite of where they were 10 years ago when they seem to try to want to be everything, but also really have, I guess, for lack of a better word, a soul. I'm not sure what the soul is going to be if this is what your strategy is.
So you heard what Bill Simmons had to say there. Now, here's what's interesting. Did you guys know Bill Simmons used to work at ESPN, right? And he at times clashed with some of the executives there. Then he went on to start The Ringer, and I think he sold The Ringer for over $100 million, right? And The Ringer is a news publication and an amalgamation of various podcasts. And he was one of the guys that really showed the potential of the independent space, how lucrative podcasts could be. He was one of the guys that figured it out. But back to what he was saying, everything that they were talking about in terms of ESPN dumbing down its viewers and looking for people that are less analytical, less, frankly, for us to be frank, less smart than the current, than the previous crop of talent that they had, I think is 100% true. And do you know how I know it's true? It is true because I remember Stephen A. Smith discussing this very thing when the news broke of ESPN First Take firing Max Kellerman. Some of you are like, how do you know this is true? If you guys remember, when the news came out that Max was fired, Stephen A. Smith was doing various press runs. He went to the Breakfast Club. He went to, I think, did he go to The View or somewhere else? But then he also went to the Joe Budden podcast. And when he went to the Joe Budden podcast, we'd actually covered this. He went to the Joe Budden podcast and Joe Budden asked him, look, why didn't things work out? He explained. And then he took it a step further. He said, did it have to do with ratings? And Stephen A. Smith said, no, it had nothing to do with ratings. It had everything to do with how Max Kellerman was being received through our various metrics that we use to measure sentiment. he was talking about TikTok, YouTube, and all of that. And then it made me think, wait a minute, this is exactly what Bill Simmons was talking about. So for those of you who don't remember what Stephen A. Smith had to say on the Joe Budden podcast, I think just over a year ago, I want to play that for you now and then come back and give you guys our closing thoughts. Take a listen to him here.
What do you say to the people say they saw the tension between you and Max developing on air before his departure from the show? Did you hear any of that?
I heard some of it. I would take full responsibility for that. That's totally my fault.
Okay.
And the reason why it was my fault, because I didn't like working with him, man. It's just that damn simple. I didn't like it. I thought the show was stale. I thought that we had flatlined when it came to the public at large. And I'm trying to win. I mean, I didn't want to go from number 1 to number 2 when Skip left. That's not what I wasn't having that. That was not going to happen.
Did anything in the numbers say that you might have been headed that way?
No, but to me it did.
Creatively?
To me it did, not just creatively, but the consistency of the number.
Got it.
In other words, it wasn't going this way.
Yeah.
It was just there. And so that's what I was feeling. And it was like, listen, I had mad respect from him from the standpoint that white dude, highly intelligent, Ivy League educated from Columbia, smart as a whip, can talk his ass off, can talk about anything. And I get all of that. But you weren't an athlete and you weren't a journalist. And the absence of the two components left people wondering, why should we listen to you? Okay, well, you might have had that figured out on Sports Nation, or you might have had that figured out on another show. But on this show, if you looked at the content emanating in the social stratosphere, meaning YouTube and other components that you use to measure one's cachet, Q ratings, focus groups, all of these different things, it was like I was damn near doing the show by myself because we were oceans apart in terms of cachet. Well, how are you oceans apart from me if you sitting right across from me 5 days a week for the whole 2 hours? Because one of us is resonating and one of us is not in that platform. And so for me, I was like, look, this is what it is. And we had a number of conversations, one-on-one, many, many times. I know this audience. I know what they're looking for. I know what they need, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, you're going to do what you need to do or you don't. And if you don't do what you need to do, I'm going to get somebody who will.
So you heard what he had to say. He was essentially saying that Max Kellerman wasn't producing enough sound bites. Now, the question is, what specifically was he talking about? How can we actually understand what, well, let's look at some of the people he had on the show since Max Kellerman's departure. You have people now like Kendrick Perkins, although he was there before, he was not. He comes on much more regularly now. You have people like Chris Mad Dog Russo. You had JJ Redick, who used to be there. Now he's a head coach of the Lakers. And what do we know about these guys? Whenever they come on the show, at least once a week, there would be some clippable moment that will go viral. Whether or not it had anything to do with the X's and O's of a particular sport was irrelevant. If there was a clip of JJ Redick cussing out Stephen A. Smith, or them going at it, or Chris Mad Dog Russo going at JJ Redick and having a heated moment with Ryan Clark and all of that, if those clips went viral, it seems like that's what they wanted. They weren't so preoccupied with the analysis of a basketball game or a football game or whatever. They were more concerned with, clips and viral moments. And to that point, they're 100% correct. Do you know why? Because we can't find any of those viral moments of Zach Lowe. What you can find of Zach Lowe is just him giving you some succinct, coherent, well thought out analysis on basketball. And it seems like that's not what they're looking for. And to that point, I think Bill Simmons has a point and he's on to something. So the question to the audience is this: do you think ESPN chose to get rid of people like Max Kellerman, who you could accuse Max of everything except being dumb, and people like Jalen Rose, you can accuse him of everything except not knowing basketball, for people that will come on there and just kind of dumb viewers down and create viral moments? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. We catch you guys on the next show. Peace.